In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 $3 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
Listen, folks, I'm here to tell you our political system is broken. The two-party system is dead. They have become one and the same.
Keep on doing what you do, Rick. You're my favorite host. Favorite host.
This is always the killer, the one that just destroys that never Trump argument. Hillary Clinton will fill the Supreme Court with liberals. She'll also appoint federal judges with a liberal bent to them.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Don't let anybody tell you that it's corporations and businesses that create jobs.
Arrogant, sanctimonious, self-righteous, sabotaging Trump.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25%, they can't afford. I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of much better than they're taken care of now. The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side. ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS. Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Maybe that's what I said.
What realized is that the Bill Kristols of the world, the never Trump people, they were just never serious. They never had any kind of ground game. They never had an actual candidate they could pick.
And in a surprising and disturbing move today, the Libertarian vice presidential candidate just agreed that rifles are weapons of mass destruction and people on the terror watch list should not be allowed to purchase guns. So in other words, the party of freedom is liberty for me, but not for thee. Go figure.
Compromise where you can. Where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree.
Alright folks, well happy Monday evening. It is Labor Day, September 5th, 2016. I hope everybody's had a great holiday weekend. For those of you who had to work today, I do hope you made the best of your situation, and I hope everybody is ready to get started, because we have a new series that we'll be running every Monday. Now that will change for us a little bit, because as you know, next Monday the show moves to daytime. So the first probably hour and a half of the Monday show will be spent on the Darkside of US History, and then we will move on to other topics. For tonight, this will remain for this week. It will remain a standard 60-minute show, like we've always done. The expansion doesn't happen until next week. Want to give a quick shout out to anybody listening that is listening Memorex, whether it be through SHR Media, AMFM247.com, Red Nation Rising Radio, the Liberty Channel, or Spreaker, Stitcher, SoundCloud, FM Player, iHeartRadio, or iTunes, and there are others. Just want to thank everybody for listening, whether you choose to do so live or Memorex really doesn't matter to me. The fact that you take time out of your day to listen when there are hundreds of thousands of other choices you could make is very, very it's a great thing for me. So I try to say that as often as possible because I want you to understand I don't take a single listener for granted, and I do appreciate the fact that you guys take time to listen out of your busy schedule. All right, so now we have the chat open. I noticed that the Trigger and the Ron are hanging out in the chat. Good evening, gentlemen. All right, so I guess before we start with the main topic, it's still going to tie together a little bit, but I keep coming back to this whole Colin Kaepernick story. And I know you guys have heard me say this before, but I'm just going to give you my straight-up opinion on it and then tell you why we probably shouldn't be paying so much attention to it. Simple fact of the matter is, Colin Kaepernick has the constitutional right to behave like a douchebag if that's what Colin Kaepernick wants to do. One of the reasons we shouldn't be paying so much attention to it is I'm pretty sure that it is an attention stunt. It's a publicity stunt. Go look at the numbers for his jersey sales for last year on the team. As far as the team store ranking went, he was the bottom jersey seller last year for the 49ers store online. Now he's the top seller. So first of all, I'm not entirely certain that he's not being disingenuous with his protestations. Second of all, even if he is or isn't, it really doesn't matter. People fought, bled, and died for our ability to exercise our beliefs freely in speech, and that's exactly what he is doing. Now, why am I letting it go? Why do I sound like everybody else on the left that's like, this is really no big deal? It's because honestly, it's not. Look, it is to us. And that's the part I don't want you to think I'm letting go of. When I saw what he did, and I saw that he did it not only once, but now twice, I was angry on the inside. But then I realized that's what he's wanting to have happen. He wants us to be angry. He wants us to be angry enough that we're paying extra attention to him, his antics, and his team. And it's working. So now my question, while we start delving into the dark side of US history, because this does kind of tie into it a little bit, why is the media making such a big deal about this story? Why didn't they make such a big deal about the Ryan Lochte story? Just curious, because there's been a very important thing that happened first with the Ryan Lochte story, and then when that one kind of lost its traction, this one seems to have kind of picked it up, and the media has been running with it because people are outraged. You know what all the outrage and all the anger and the media keeping it stirred up is not letting a lot of folks realize? The Pentagon has lost $6.3 trillion. Nearly half of our national debt has been lost by the Pentagon. Now, they say lost, I'm not so sure, and this is not a tinfoil hat moment for me, but I want to remind you guys that now that we have the hindsight of history, one of the last times a large sum of money like this came up missing from the Pentagon was a week from yesterday in 2000. Well, no, it was September 9th or 10th was when they first started talking about money coming up missing, and that was 2001. So I'm curious if there's going to be another corollary of some kind, because it seems like every time the Pentagon starts making noise about losing money, all of a sudden there's some sort of a national crisis. Now, whether that, well, I'm not even going to finish the rest of that, because this isn't tinfoil hat night. This is dark moments in U.S. history night. So we are going to start off with those. Now, tonight's episode is going to be dealing pretty much specifically with the CIA. It may actually take us a few episodes to get through all of the things the CIA have been involved with. We're going to focus specifically on this episode, though, with drugs. And has the CIA secretly been running drugs for the U.S. government? And if so, for how long? have an audio clip I want to play for you real quick, and then we'll start digging into the meat of it.
A Gulfstream jet that crash-landed in Mexico in late September bearing a load of nearly 4 tons of cocaine was used by the CIA for trips between the U.S. and Guantanamo Bay. But that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I speak as a retired international covert operative for the Drug Enforcement Administration. What we're uncovering here through the hard and courageous work of journalist Bill Conroy is something nobody, Central Intelligence, FBI, they don't want this out there. They don't want anybody peeking under the rugs that Mark is talking about this plane crash carrying 4 tons of cocaine. Any kind of corruption you could imagine occurs. And when you talk about 4 tons of cocaine coming into the United States with the involvement of a man who worked as a pilot for CIA, DEA, and FBI, who was obviously somebody who was a shaker and a mover.
His jet crashed in late September of this year in the Yucatan. It had about 4 tons of coke on it, and it flew out of Fort Lauderdale to Mexico, and from Mexico to Colombia, Rio Negro, Colombia, is where it took off from, which is just outside of Medellin. And, it obviously picked up the coke in Colombia and was headed back toward our neck of the woods.
Yeah, that's the route.
Right. And it was gonna land at an airport, again in the Yucatan, probably from what I've been able to gather, loaded down with that much cocaine and had to refuel.
Yeah. Exactly.
But as they said, someone didn't grease the deal right. In the airport they were going to land at, there was a ship change, and they wouldn't let them land. So they went to another airport, tried to land. They wouldn't land there, and they basically got stranded in the air, ran out of fuel, and had to ditch it. And that's how they got caught. So it was a deal that went bad, apparently. What's come out on it so far is the jet that they were flying, we got the FAA records on it, and the Europeans have been looking into the rendition flights that the CIA, the agency, was running for, Guantanamo. And these tail numbers on this jet that crashed show up in some of their research as being used, this jet being used for at least 3 flights to Guantanamo between 03 and 05.
All right, so there you have it. Recently, a jet crashed that was used by the CIA. But one of the funny things they found was when the jet crashed, it had tons and tons and tons of cocaine aboard. Now, you might think this is a one-time incident, but let's not forget, I've spent the last several months trying to tell everybody that the government has not necessarily worked for us in a very long time, that they don't have our best interests at heart, and they typically are doing all kinds of whatever it is they feel they need to do to generate money, hold on to power, etc. So what we're going to do is we are going to take a really long look at the CIA and them being involved in drug trades, and we're going to kind of work backwards. First little snippet we're going to talk about is from the mid-'80s to the early 90s, and this would involve Haiti. While working to keep key Haitian military and political leaders in power, the CIA turned a blind eye to their clients' drug trafficking. In 1986, the agency added some more names to its payroll by creating a new Haitian organization, the National Intelligence Service, or SIN. SIN was purportedly created to fight the cocaine trade, though SIN officers themselves engaged in the trafficking, a trade aided and abetted by some of the Haitian military and political leaders. So there we have, in the mid-'80s and early 90s in Haiti, the CIA was intricately involved, or at least tertiarily involved, in drug trade. They knew about it, they didn't do anything about it, they even condoned it and helped create a group to facilitate it that was supposedly going to combat it. And everybody knows where a good portion of those drugs go. They go here. So why were they turning a blind eye to it? Pretty simple. Money. The CIA found a way to make money. They've been doing it for decades. It's how they get their black book funding. It's how they get the projects funded that nobody knows they do because they can't have a paper trail for them any other way. Now, 1980s to early 1990s, Afghanistan. CIA-supported Mujahideen rebels engaged heavily in drug trafficking while fighting against the Soviet-supported government and its plans to reform the very backward Afghan society. The agency's principal client was Gulbuddin Hekmayer, I probably just butchered his name, one of the leading drug lords and leading heroin refiner. CIA supplied trucks and mules which had carried arms into Afghanistan were used to transport opium to laboratories along the Afghan-Pakistan border. The output provided up to 1/2 of the heroin used annually in the United States and 3/4 of that used in Western Europe. U.S. officials admitted in 1990 that they had failed to investigate or take action against the drug operation because of a desire not to offend their Pakistani and Afghan allies. In 1993, an official of the DEA called Afghanistan the new Columbia of the drug world. Now, why is this one significant? Why is it important? I want you to look at what we just talked about. We're talking about Afghanistan in the 80s and the 90s. Cold War's at its peak. The enemy of the enemy is my friend was the message of the day. We worked with anyone who was opposed to Russia, regardless of their political beliefs, regardless of their religious beliefs. It didn't really matter. As long as they were opposed to communism, we made them a friend. We've been creating our own enemies now for decades, and we don't even realize it. All in and for the sake of creating power and holding on to power and maintaining power. And again, for the CIA money, because they need money for their budget. There are things that they can't really put in the budget, and we all know about them. They don't want us to know about them, but we still know about them. All right, so then we have 1980s, Central America. Then I have a kind of an audio clip that will go along with this one. This one's a bit longer, so we'll just probably wait to play it till we get back from the break. The San Jose Mercury News series documents just one thread of the interwoven operations linking the CIA, the Contras, and the cocaine cartels. Obsessed with overthrowing the leftist Sandinista government in Nicaragua, Reagan administration officials tolerated drug trafficking as long as the traffickers gave support to the Contras. In 1989, the Senate Subcommittee on Terrorism, Narcotics and International Operations, the Kerry Committee, oddly enough, concluded a 3-year investigation by stating there was substantial evidence of drug smuggling through the war zones on the part of individual Contras. Contra suppliers, Contra pilots, mercenaries who worked for the Contras, and Contra supporters throughout the region. U.S. officials involved in Central America failed to address the drug issue for fear of jeopardizing the war efforts against Nicaragua. In each case, one or another agency of the U.S. government had information regarding the involvement either while it was occurring or immediately thereafter. Senior U.S. policymakers were not immune to the idea that drug money was a perfect solution to the Contras' funding problems. Now, why is this one important, you might say? There's another interesting little corollary that I kind of lump into the dark side of U.S. history. This story that we're talking about now didn't actually break until the 90s. But there was another very important distraction going on around the time of the 90s. And this was happening around the same time. It was the Monica Lewinsky scandal. This story broke, and the Monica Lewinsky scandal happened all around the same time. Now, I have a question for you, and it's something that's been driving me crazy. Because whatever you think personally of Bill Clinton and his history is POTUS or what he did there, the one thing you honestly shouldn't be able to say about him is that he's an idiot. So it's someone who was an attorney, whether he was disbarred or not. At some point he went through law school, he had the training. So you explain to me why someone who was an attorney, when standing in front of Congress, would not simply state the question that you're asking me is a private matter between me and my wife and will be addressed there. Therefore, I am pleading the fifth as to whether or not I have had any sexual contact with this woman. Why did he not do that? Let me tell you why he didn't do that. He didn't do that because someone convinced him that he needed to fall on his sword. He needed to be a distraction. And why do you say that? Why do I say that? Pretty simple. Again, they knew this story was about to break. They knew this story was about to break. So someone convinced Clinton to stand up and lie to the American people. It wasn't an important lie. It wasn't a terrible lie. It wasn't even anything that anybody else put in the same situation likely would not have lied about. But it was still enough to outrage the American people because a sitting president had lied to them and it was obvious. Then, the day the story actually broke, Clinton decides to lob cruise missiles at an aspirin factory. Now, according to folks like Rush Limbaugh, who was fairly prominent on both his TV show and his radio show at that time, and had really started his national rise, his thoughts on that were they lobbed cruise missiles at an aspirin factory that they had designated a potential terrorist outpost as a distraction from the Monica Lewinsky story. But the funny thing is, the very day they launched those cruise missiles, this story broke in the media. Guess what they were talking about instead? The cruise missiles. That's right. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a really quick break because when we come back, we've got some audio I want to run through, so we're going to take the break a couple minutes early. This is the America Off the Rails show, and we are covering the Darkside of US History, and this is, again, September 5th, 2016, Labor Day. We'll be right back with you here in just a few moments.
Stay tuned. Things are going to get real interesting. You're listening to the Spark Radio Network.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of a short story through to line edits of a full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
All right, folks, welcome back. This is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. We're into the last half of the show. My, oh my, where does the time go? All right, so in case you've just joined us, we've been talking about the dark side of U.S. history. Also, the fact that the media and the administrations typically work together to produce distractions so that we're not aware of other things that are happening that are a lot more important. Case in point, Ryan Lochte and this incident with Colin Kaepernick seem to be being used to distract folks from the fact that the Pentagon has misplaced $6.3 trillion. Also, there was the Monica Lewinsky scandal and President Clinton lobbing cruise missiles at an aspirin factory, which preeminently at first seemed to be being used as a distraction from the weak stance he had on terror as well as this scandal. But truth be told, there was a news story that broke the same day about the Reagan administration using the CIA to raise money for the Contra Group because they couldn't get the money from Congress. Now, I will tell you that history tells a slightly different story. Of course, Reagan gets the trouble because his name was at the top of the letterhead, but let's not forget his vice presidential running mate, and at that point, the vice president was very high up in the CIA. Is actually, if memory serves, I believe he was the director of CIA at one point. So I really don't think Reagan had too much to do with it. Because if you listen to the medical reports of around that time frame, he was already starting to show the beginning onset signs of Alzheimer's when that stuff was occurring. So I think if anybody's to blame, there are other folks in the administration that likely hold a lot more of the blame than POTUS, but ultimately it was still his responsibility and his problem. Now, there's a bit of an audio clip I want to run for you now. I didn't have a chance to edit this one very much. This is actually pulled straight from a video. Usually I'll edit out some of the weird musical breaks where it's like showing you things you can't read, but I didn't really have a chance to do that with this one. We're going to let it run anyway because it's got some pretty interesting stuff in there. And this is actually from Gary Webb. You might recognize that name. We'll talk a little bit more about him when the clip's done. Bear with me for just a moment here. Alright, hang on. We're going to have to do this one the old-fashioned way. My little handy-dandy download tool didn't like this one very much. Alright, here we go.
Investigative reporting is being sort of squeezed out of the picture, and I think intentionally, because it tends to ruffle feathers. I mean, good investigative reporting does ruffle feathers, and it draws lawsuits, and it gets newspapers in trouble.
Oh, pirates, yes, they rob I. Sold I to the merchant ship.
My name is Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist. I've been an investigative journalist for about 25 years for daily newspapers. And in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking. What my story showed was that the cocaine that was being sold in those neighborhoods was coming from mainly one source, and this one source was being used to finance a guerrilla war in Central America. The general idea of the CIA dealing drugs was something that the American mainstream press had never written about before, and that's why it prompted outrage among blacks, among drug reform activists, among politicians, by the CIA, by every federal agency involved in the drug war, because it showed they weren't doing their jobs, that it was a fraud. Right after we published the stories, the support we got from the media was very favorable. Newsweek magazine did a big piece on the story and said it was well documented and well researched. The website was getting like 1 million hits a day. There were marches in Watts, there were marches in Compton, there were candlelight vigils. Every California senator demanded an official investigation. So the story itself was really building momentum. The government reaction was no reaction. And this, I believe, was a very careful strategy, because nobody was going to believe the government if they came out and said we didn't do it. The proof was fairly overwhelming, since we had all these government documents showing that it had happened. So what happened was they let the so-called liberal press speak for them. And they had the national security reporters at the Washington Post, who coincidentally used to work for the CIA, write stories saying it doesn't mean anything. It was a distraction from what the story said, and it became sort of a media war between the Mercury News, which stood behind the story at that point, and the rest of the establishment media, who wanted us to back away from it. And part of that reason was because these major newspapers had written about this issue back in the 1980s, but had written about it very dismissively, as if this is nonsense, it doesn't happen, it can never happen. And then 10 years later, we came back with documentation showing that it was absolutely true, and that it was worse than we thought. We had gotten the story out around them, and we had gotten it out in a big way that they couldn't control, and that was through the internet. And I think a lot of this was directed to the Mercury News to say, we don't care what documentation you have, we don't care what kind of story you've got, we set the national news agenda. And if we don't like your story, we will kill your story regardless if it's true. The media rejoiced when this came out because it meant they had won. They had forced a newspaper to back away from a story that was true, simply because of this barrage of criticism, of mindless criticism, essentially, that really took its toll on the editors of the newspaper. And they were being seen as sort of outcasts from the club. And I think they made a political decision that it was better in the long run to take a dive on this story and get back in the good graces of the rest of the media. It was essentially a war between my editors and myself because I wouldn't apologize for the story or back away from the story, and fought them on it publicly. And so they transferred me to a bureau that was 140 miles from where I lived, and I called in sick a lot. One of the things I'm proudest of in regards to that story is the website that the Mercury News set up, because it really was the first time that a newspaper brought its readers not only into the interior of the paper, but into the reporters' notebooks. This was a story that, as I told my editors, had a very high unbelievability factor built into it. A lot of people were going to say, this can't be true. And this story became a sensation because of the website, not because of the story, but because people could get to it. And they could never have gotten to it before because the San Jose Mercury News is a small regional newspaper in Northern California that you couldn't read if you lived in New York, or you couldn't read if you lived in LA. But this story you could read anywhere in the world and see all of our documentation. So it became, and we did this on purpose to make it very hard to knock down, to make it very difficult for people to say this didn't happen. But they said it didn't happen anyway.
Alright, so there you have from Gary Webb, the author of the story that actually eventually did break and kind of exposed the whole Iran-Contra situation, and the fact that the CIA was at least tacitly involved in drug running to fund it. There is a movie that I would recommend if you... because a lot of folks don't have time to do the research that I do. I enjoy research, and it's one of the reasons why I started a talk show. I love looking into things. I like trying to see why things happen the way they happen, and it's part of what makes me good at this, and it's also part of what makes me want to bang my head against the table repeatedly when I see an election cycle like this one. But the movie is called Kill the Messenger, and it actually outlines all of this story that you just heard a little 6.5-minute blurb on. And the simple fact of the matter is the story itself is very compelling. And I have to admit, I actually watched the movie even knowing some of the things that I did. I watched it anyway. Because look, I've said this from day one. Reagan has always been a hero of mine. But look, the simple fact of the matter is everyone that ever holds office is a human being. They're never going to get anything 100% right. As a matter of fact, there's going to be more than sometimes they get things wrong. Now, I don't know, again, if Reagan was involved in this or whether it happened using folks that reported directly to him, and maybe he wasn't made fully aware of it, but even if he was, it doesn't really matter at this point because it's history. But the scary thing about the Gary Webb situation and the fact that the CIA has been doing this stuff for a very, very long time, and we're going to go back to probably at least a couple more overviews of that before we run out of time, is the ending of the Gary Webb story. Gary Webb supposedly committed suicide. If you listen to the media who reported the fact that he was found dead in his apartment, and this was after he had gone through a divorce, he lost his wife, the story basically broke him. But he did it anyway. And he was found dead in his apartment a few days after the story officially broke and actually stuck. Except the scary thing is, if you look at the reports, it was ruled a suicide, but somehow he managed to shoot himself in the head 2 times. Now, I'm not calling anybody out on that one. I'm not saying the government did it. I don't know how it happened. I don't know what happened. All I know is it seems kind of interesting to me that a reporter basically gives one of the scariest agencies in our government the black eye, and all of a sudden that reporter winds up dead under what would normally be considered questionable circumstances, but not by the media this time. Alright, so we got a few minutes left here. We got about, I guess we're down to about 14 minutes. So we should be able to get through quite a few more blurbs about some of the stuff that the CIA has been up to here. We just did the 80s. So then we have the 1970s and the 1980s, and this is involving Panama. For more than a decade, Panamanian strongman Manuel Noriega was a highly paid CIA asset and collaborator despite knowledge by U.S. drug authorities as early as 1971 that the general was heavily involved in drug trafficking and money laundering. Noriega facilitated guns for drugs, flights for the Contras, providing protection and pilots as well as safe havens for drug cartel officials, and discreet banking facilities. U.S. officials, including CIA Director William Webster at the time, and several DEA officers, sent Noriega letters of praise for efforts to thwart drug trafficking, albeit only against competitors of his Medellin cartel patrons. The U.S. government only turned against Noriega invading Panama in December 1989 and kidnapping the general once they discovered he was providing intelligence and services to the Cubans and Sandinistas. Ironically, drug trafficking through Panama increased after the U.S. invasion. Again, another instance of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, who then eventually becomes our enemy. Look, folks, I am not libertarian. I am not one of these guys that thinks we need to shut down all of our bases, pull back, and watch the world do whatever the world's going to do. But we need to start working on a new form of public policy when it comes to international relations. The Enemy of My Enemy is My Friend is a wartime book. We are not technically in a war, at least not a standard war. We are at war, but it is not one where the enemy of the enemy is my friend can fit. It's the same problem that we ran into in the Cold War, because we had a clear designated enemy there, but it wasn't a war like any others that we had faced. So we wound up creating many more problems for us in the future, because we were doing things the way we had always done them in brand new scenarios rather than adapting. Now, 1973 to 1980. This one reaches all the way to Australia, believe it or not. The Nguyen Hand Bank of Sydney was a CIA bank in all but name. Among its officers were a network of U.S. generals, admirals, and CIA men, including former CIA Director William Colby, who was also one of its lawyers, with branches in Saudi Arabia, Europe, Southeast Asia, South America, and the U.S. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. The Nguyen Bank. Nguyen Hand Bank financed drug trafficking, money laundering, and international arms dealings. In 1980, amid several mysterious deaths, the bank collapsed $50 million in debt. And it just keeps going, folks. We got 1950 to early 1970s in Indochina. During U.S. military involvement in Laos and other parts of Indochina, Air America flew opium and heroin throughout the area. Many GIs in Vietnam became addicts. A laboratory built a CIA headquarters in northern Laos was used to refine heroin. After a decade of American military intervention, Southeast Asia had become the source of 70% of the world's illicit opium and the major supplier of raw materials for America's booming heroin market. So the scary thing about when you really start taking a look at all the things that were going on behind the scenes kind of gives you a whole new reason as to why we might have been involved in some of these conflicts after all. Because I've always wondered about Vietnam. I really have. Because, look, as a student of history, when I looked at Vietnam, when I started looking at some of the things that they had done after World War II, it kind of made sense in a certain level as to why pretty much after World War II we stopped trying to win wars. Because look, let's face it, whether we want to admit it or not, we stopped trying to win wars. We started pulling our punches. It started happening in Korea. There is a financial corollary to that, though, I guess you could say. Because what they started doing was they started putting together ways to make sure that all the government's economies were intertwined. That way no one government could attack another one to the point of it being nearly obliterated without risking the rest of the world facing financial collapse. It was a kind of an offshoot of the mutually assured destruction that nuclear weapons had provided once both Russia and the U.S. had nuclear weapons. There was a standoff called the Cold War based on the fact that the one wouldn't launch on the other because it was mutually assured destruction. They had found a way to do the same thing financially, which is, on the surface, one of the reasons why it seems like we really don't try very hard to win wars anymore, because we used to just bomb the heck out of everybody that stood in our way until they weren't there anymore, until they surrendered. We really don't do that anymore. At first, the mutually assured destruction set up by the world to make sure everybody's governments and economies were intertwined kind of made sense as to why that happened. But when you start looking at all the different ways that the CIA was using to make money all over the world in things that we consider illegal. I mean, you and I deal drugs, we go to jail. Our government does it, apparently it's fine. I think there's another reason why they don't want them to be legalized. It would kill their funding. Alright, last one, and we got to start making room to get out of here. This actually puts us all the way to the end of what I was going to talk about tonight anyway, so that works out pretty well. From 1947 to 1951, this is in France. According to Alfred W. McCoy, in The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, CIA arms, money, and disinformation enabled Corsican criminal syndicates in Marseille to wrestle control of labor unions from the Communist Party. The Corsicans gained political influence and control over the docks, ideal conditions for cementing a long-term partnership with mafia drug distributors, which turned Marseille into the post-war heroin capital of the Western world. Marseille's first heroin laboratories were opened in 1951, only months after the Corsicans took over the waterfront. So again, we allowed criminal syndicate to wrestle control of labor unions from the Communist Party because we were more afraid of the Communist Party, and eventually they wound up probably being an even bigger mess or threat than the Communist Party was in France. I mean, look, like I said, I'm not a non-interventionalist. I'm really not. But we need to start thinking about the things that we're doing because we're not looking further down the board. Look at this. From 1947 all the way to the 1990s, and probably still going on today, but I couldn't find any more accurate records or more current records. The CIA has in some way either turned a blind eye or helped facilitate the drug trade all over the world. And yet people want to continue to tell us that our government has our best interest at heart. I'm sorry, I don't believe that anymore. Not seeing the collaboration between the two parties that have happened this election cycle, which is completely unprecedented, might I add. There has not been anything like this in my lifetime, and I can't find any historical references to a point in time where both parties had the same talking points, espoused a lot of the same ideals, and none of them were what was best for the country, and yet they're still trying to become president and nobody's paying attention. I mean, I don't know how much more plain we can make it, folks, when it really comes right down to it. These people do not have our best interest at heart. If anything, the fact that they've had a government agency running rampant since the 40s should prove to you that these people have not had our best interest at heart for a very, very long time. And like I said, folks, this was just week one. There are so many other stories of different things in our government that don't make sense unless the simple fact of the matter is they're not who they pretend to be. They're not our protectors, they're not our defenders, they're only out looking for themselves. And to me, this election cycle proves that wholeheartedly. All right, so at this point, we have got to make our way to get out of here, folks. We've got the Rhino Report coming up next right here on the home station, KLNRradio.com. We do have a couple of other big announcements that we'll be making here shortly. While I say shortly, it's just something that's in the works. It's not anything set in stone. We've just been making noise, and actually, one of our hosts has already managed to do it. I think I may actually talk to him to figure out exactly how he's doing what he's doing, because it's the next logical step for us to do here, and that is to start integrating video for hosts that are interested in moving things to the next level. Now, that's not going to be a requirement, so nobody panic. I'm still trying to figure out if it's something that I'm going to do or not either, because I have the face for radio. I'm not sure I have the face for TV, even if it is streaming video, but we shall see. All right, so on that note, folks, I'm out for the night. You guys have a great night. Hope everybody enjoys the remainder of this Labor Day. Actually, for some of you, it's over in about 5 minutes. But it's been a great night. You guys take care. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.